Hey, what's poppin', guys? Sizzle here, and today we're going to take a look at one of the biggest collections in CSGO history, which is a collection with 18 skins called the Norse Collection. So first things first, we have the SG553 Barricade, which, it's interesting. So if you guys remember from one of the other collections, this is supposed to be actually a maze design, and it's a lot more noticeable in this one because of the color scheme. And it does noticeably cover the entire weapon, which is kind of rare for SG553s, so I'll give it some props for that. But it has a really dark color scheme, which makes it a lot harder to see the design in most places, so for that, I'm gonna have to put this at a D tier if I can actually find it even. It is a very dark weapon. Yeah. Next up we have the FAMAS Knight Borere. It's got an interesting design to it. Unfortunately, it's super scratched in the front, despite being fact new. So I can't put it too high because these scratches really take away from this somewhat okay design. So I'm still going to have to put in D tier. I don't particularly want it. I do think it's a bit nicer than that SG though. Yeah, that's about all there is to say about it. And we have the MP7 Scorched, which is a burnt MP7 that would have been a tan MP7. I don't want this either. I want it even less than that for Moss. It's still a bit more than SG, but that's about it. It doesn't look good. And we have the SSG08 Redstone, which is red, the tan top, and the normal finish and the normal back. Very generic looking skin. It's maybe a tiny bit better than stock, but that's a big maybe. I'm almost willing to put this in F tier. Um, but I'll just put it bottom of D tier. I think it looks worse than that SG even. It's way too primitive. Then we have a Galil AR Tornado, which I know I said the last one was way too primitive, but simplicity can be nice when you have a good color scheme. And the Tornado notoriously has a solid color scheme. This tan and like light-ish blue kind of work together really well. And when it looks super clean like this one, there's not too many scratches. I actually wouldn't mind picking one up. And though it is a lower rated skin, I actually like the Tornadoes. I think they look kind of nice. Next up we have the USPS Pathfinder, which it's got that maze design with a better color scheme that makes the maze more visible. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if this is wear or what, but considering it's a .03, I don't think this is wear. It's just like weirdly dark at portions. It almost kind of looks like some water got on it while someone was applying the design. And that kind of takes away a lot from the skin, makes it look a lot more like battle worn. What would have been otherwise a C tier skin, I think that actually brings it all the way down to D tier. I don't necessarily want one of these because that looks so bad. Just not nice. Yeah. Then we have the Mag7 chainmail, which is the P2000 chainmail pattern, but a bit brighter, with a gold like top and finish, which actually looks pretty clean. Not gonna lie, especially for the Mag7. Mag7's notorious for even in fact new having a lot of scratches on the front and this handle. I can't even notice them on the handle. I can see them on the front still, but that's okay. And it actually looks somewhat okay. I would not mind picking one of these up. I think it's a little bit worse than the Tornado, though. I just like that kind of simplicity it has going on. Anyway, next up we have the M4A1S Moss Quartz. Yeah, I guess it's a mossy quartz. Just looks like a generic camo skin, especially since it's super dark. So I'm gonna put it where I think camo skins belong, and that's right above the Scorched. Yeah. Next up we have the Dual Breast Pyre, which I think is like a almost looks like an ancient like Japanese drawing of like fire coming out of a house, like with the smoke, and the red's part's supposed to be like the fire, which actually looks somewhat okay. I don't think it's very nice though. It's not particularly nice, and it's kind of a very dark color scheme. So I'm gonna put it above the camo skins, but still not at a C tier. Next up, we have our first blue, being the Scar 20 Brass, which is just a brass finish on a Scar 20. It's noticeably stretched in the front, as most Scar weapon skins kind of tend to be, which is particularly bad because brass is supposed to look realistic, and in real life, brass is not going to look super stretched like this. The whole weapon looked like dirty brass, like the middle and back did. Might actually be like a decent finish, but just for that, I'm gonna have to put it down quite a lot because it really kind of detracts from how nice this thing looks. To the point that I'd actually put it just barely above the camo skin. Next up, we have the CZ Auto Emerald Quartz. Which, yeah, it's like a green and emerald colored. I guess that's supposed to be a quartz pattern, but it doesn't really particularly look like one, and it doesn't look that nice, in my opinion. Actually, gonna put this below the camo skin because I don't think this even looks good at all. it's it's a really bad color of green to be using together, and the front magazine isn't even colored for some reason, so it's bad. And we have the XM1014 Frostbori, which is that same design that looked kind of cool we saw earlier, but a bit more fleshed out, nice looking. The downside being this is an unfinished skin, so half of it is still the stock design, like the pump and the whole back here. And because of that, I don't like finished skins. I'm going to be putting it pretty low, unjustifiably low, right above the camo skin. And next up, we have the Mag10 Copper Bore. These are that same design with a copper finish, very noticeably copper. You can tell by the way it shines. And even though this is technically an unfinished skin, in-game with the Mag10, all you really see is this main box. So having a kind of cool looking design like this that has a copper finish, it looks kind of nice in most lighting. It's just nice. I would not mind picking one of these up. I think it looks probably the best out of everything we've seen so far, so I'm putting it at the top of C tier. Next up, we have the Og Flame Jormungandr, or Jormungandr, Jormungandr, Jormungandr. I don't know how you're supposed to say it, but yeah, it's got a bunch of like ropes of different colors kind of going around in random ways, and it doesn't cover the whole skin and has the noticeable Og, the signature Og kind of scratching right here. It doesn't look that great. Doesn't look particularly horrible, but I'd say probably is solid like middle D tier candidate. Doesn't look that nice. Then we have the P90 Astral Jormungandr, what? I'm not even gonna try to say it anymore. Which has that same design with a nicer blue teal finish, and it actually covers the entire weapon, which is a big plus. And this front part, especially in bright lighting, looks fucking beautiful. It's a beautiful color of blue. It looks amazing in lighting. The base design actually looks pretty solid in lighting too, and it even looks solid in the dark. It's just a really solid looking P90 skin. I don't really think you can ever go wrong with it, and if it wasn't super pricey, I'd consider picking one up for myself, so I'm actually going to put in the B tier. Next up, we have one of the like 3 decent Deagle skins in this game. The Emerald Jormungandr. I probably should look this up before the video. Anyway, it's a nice green, like ropey skin, and it's a nice green. It's like an emerald. The reason it's called emerald is it's got that emerald type of green look to it, and you can actually see the dragon head here. So I guess there's a massive dragon just leaping around all over the place. It just looks really solid. Yet again, if this wasn't so expensive, I would actually pick one up. I think it's a really solid choice. Next up is the Negev Mjolnir, which is really expensive and for good reason. Mainly because it's used in trade-ups, but the second reason is it looks really, really clean. It's one of those HD looking skins where like everything's super well defined, and it's definitely one of those skins where whoever made it put in a ton of time and thought into this thing. Every design is a little bit different from the rest, but they all come together, and the coloring all comes together in a way that looks absolutely beautiful. And the kind of red design of this kind of shows off like the anger and like power behind like like the weapon Mjolnir. And they got some like lightning strikes at the front too, to suggest the original like Norse mythology to go with it. And yeah, it's just a really clean looking skin. Yet again, one I wouldn't mind picking up. I think it's probably the best one we've seen so far. I'm actually gonna put this in an A tier. Actually, no, I'm gonna put this behind the Deagle. I think the Deagle's a bit nicer, but I wouldn't mind picking this up if it wasn't as pricey as it is. And our final weapon, which is infamous for how well people received it, and it's actually the only weapon that I know of in CS history to have no price data on CSGO Stash because it never really sold in the Steam market, is the Op Gungnir. I mean, you can kind of see why. It's very one of a kind. There's not many weapons. I don't think there's any real op skins up until the very recent release of the Desert Hydra that had a beautiful white scope like this. It even has like the clamps here almost look like they have like faces, like the 2 eyes and like the mouth, which almost like Norse guard faces. There's like this cool bird design on the scope, despite generally looking kind of white. The barrel still looks white, but has designs all the way through, which I don't think any weapon has even now. And the base design of the weapon is this cool, like, blue spear going through the main thing with a bunch of these random kind of other designs going through it. And it just looks clean. I mean, the color scheme is absolutely amazing. It looks good in all lighting, from light to dark. And it's just beautiful. I don't even know how to describe, how to like, describe just how beautiful this thing is. I really wish this wasn't as pricey as it is because it is just a phenomenal hop skin. Probably one of my favorites in the whole game. Yeah, easy S tier, like quadruple S tier. Move it all the fucking way up. But yeah, that is the Norse collection. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and I will be seeing you in the next one. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to help with the algorithm.